have you ever visited a prostitute? Have you ever solicited prostitution? Did you in Shenzhen? Have you at any point in your life?
I don't want to focus on the question whether I solicit prostitution because that's exactly what they want. So I just wanted to stay clear here is that I did nothing regrettable to those people I cherish and love. I did not.
Over here in this Twitter screenshot, Joey Siu, one of the Hong Kong separatists who were protesting against the extradition bill and also the national security law in Hong Kong, has a problem with how the USA is abandoning all of these political, quote-unquote, political refugees, and their deferred deportation is going to expire, and these people are going to be illegal immigrants in the United States. So this just shows how insincere the United States was in cheering on these protesters and giving Hong Kong/China a hard time. And also 2 weeks ago, there's another article in the South China Morning Post, which is a popular English newspaper, online newspaper in Hong Kong. It also said Taiwan is no longer allowing refugees, these quote-unquote political refugees from Hong Kong, to stay in Taiwan because they're just being insincere like the United States too. So when these people were protesting, trying to overthrow the government of China and Hong Kong, they were cheering them on and telling that if these activists fail, they can move to the United States, Taiwan, and UK. But now the United States and Taiwan's no longer helping these people. That's just insincere. But what do you expect? And what do you expect from these people? These people, unfortunately, are too young. They're like 16 to 24 years old at the time, and they don't have enough life experience when it comes to dealing with these professional propagandists and professional politicians who are total liars in the United States, Taiwan, and UK, and a few other Western countries. It's just a matter of time in another few years that these BNO people find out that they don't qualify for full British citizenship, and it was also all a lie and a farce for Western countries to use and abuse them. So I just want to, so these people are just deranged. These people are victims too, unfortunately, and they're going to be saddled with a criminal record in Hong Kong, and they're going to be stateless, unfortunately, because they're basically banished from Hong Kong and China. Their citizenship is basically revoked because they can't renew their passports and can't renew their Hong Kong identity cards. So what caused all of this fuss and this saga in Hong Kong? So it first started with this young man from Hong Kong and this young girl from Hong Kong. They were in a boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. They went to Taiwan for holiday, and the guy killed his girlfriend and hid her in a suitcase and left her at the hotel or hostel. The guy arrived back in Hong Kong, and the police in Taiwan found a dead girl in a suitcase, and this guy in Hong Kong basically admitted to it on media and to the Hong Kong police. And Taiwan authorities were planning to they were willing to accept them back in Taiwan for him to face justice for killing his girlfriend, because it happened in Taiwan and not Hong Kong. But the main problem was that Hong Kong did not have a law that would allow extradition to Taiwan, mainland China, or Macau. So Hong Kong is a place of laws, and no laws allow Hong Kong permanent residents who are Chinese citizens to be removed from Hong Kong for crimes committed in other Chinese territories. So the Hong Kong government wanted to do an extradition law that legally allows the government of Hong Kong to extradite people to Taiwan, but these fake news pro democratic people and paid off professional funded liars like Joey Sue here were protesting against this extradition bill. There was a massive protest. Eventually, the government of Hong Kong had to drop it because nothing was getting done. All these pro-democratic lawmakers in Hong Kong Legislative Council just wasn't letting this law pass through reading. And they also couldn't pass through national security law, which every country has, every city has. And this Article 23 of Hong Kong Basic Law, which is the Constitution of Hong Kong, it was agreed upon by both China and the UK back in 1987, the Sino-British Joint Declaration. So everybody agreed with it that there would be a national security law passed at a later time after 97. China/Hong Kong waited over 20 years to pass this law, and they were already being reasonable and nice. It's within the right, it's within the law, within the agreement, within international law to have a national security law. Hong Kong and China just waited too long, over 20 years. So nothing was getting done in the Hong Kong legislature, which is our legislative council. So the central government in China just extended their own national security law to Hong Kong, and this caused massive protests fed by fake news Western media, and it just spiraled out of control. The protesters they broke into the legislative council building, trashed the place. Benny Rogers, the author of China Nexus here, thinks that it's okay to trash a government building, and he thinks that they were well disciplined. Well, based on video footage from CNN and other mainstream media, it looked nothing like discipline. It was just random vandalism and destruction. They had no plan. It's worse than the Capitol Hill riot, insurrection caused by Donald Trump. Absolutely crazy back then. There was a failure in the rule of law, failed law and order. So basically, these people were being cheered on by people like Ted Cruz and other Western politicians, but now they're left hanging to dry. I'll be reviewing this chapter. I forgot what chapter it was. Let's check what chapter it is. Chapter 8. Yeah, I'll be reviewing chapter 8 and the other remaining 4 chapters of China Nexus by Benny Rogers. Basically, I'm doing 5 chapters in one book review because Hong Kong will be taking up most of this video, and the other stuff that Benny Rogers talks about in the other chapters, it's mostly fake belief, but it's talking about stuff that happens outside of China/Hong Kong, so I won't get into much of it because it's just fake news. Though I won't be talking too much about Myanmar/Burma. I won't be talking too much about North Korea. A lot of it is just of Benny's stuff, what he writes, it's just fake news, cannot be collaborated. This guy's just a funded professional propagandist. Okay, on chapter 8, page 196 of China Nexus by Benny Rogers, over here it says 2 months after Nathan Law was elected to the Hong Kong Legislative Council as a lawmaker, he reports to the UK Parliament like the UK is the imperialistic colonial master of Hong Kong. He's basically just reporting to his masters in London, England, UK, instead of Beijing. This guy, Nathan Law, he's born in mainland China in Shenzhen. His Hong Kong dad abandoned him and his mom when he was just like a few years old, a baby still. So this guy's Hong Kong's not his real hometown. He's a colonial collaborator, imperialistic colonial collaborator. He should be reporting to Beijing instead. He's a self-hater, and this guy's just paid off. He's a paid off flyer, paid off foreign colonialist collaborator. If somebody was like elected to to be a U.S., Canadian, or UK or lawmaker of whatever country, do you think it would be okay within 2 months to go do your report in person to a foreign country's parliament before your own country's? This guy didn't even show up. Didn't even go step his foot inside the Hong Kong Legislative Council building in Hong Kong. His first report was to the UK. On page 198 over here, Benny claims that Hong Kong just had its first political prisoners in 2014 and also the 2019 riots. But this is inaccurate and fake news, because in 1967 there were even more political prisoners when the local Chinese population was in support of Chairman Mao's revolution on mainland, in the rest of China, mainland China, and these people wanted autonomy and they wanted control over Hong Kong instead of being imperialistic, colonialist subjects. They don't want to be colonial subjects to foreigners like the British Queen and these Englishmen. People do not want their city and country to be occupied by foreigners and controlled and administered by foreigners. This is just more Benny's attempt to whitewash and rewrite history for another civilization and another country. What Benny Rogers doing here is wrong. What Benny Rogers is doing is appropriating the culture and history of another civilization, trying to rewrite it as a colonial imperialist. On page 199 over here, Benny basically admits to and describes how he's basically grooming Nathan Law to be a imperialistic collaborator. So Benny Rogers is an old guy, he's like 50 or 60, and Nathan Law is a young man, early 20s around there at this time. And so Nathan's basically dealing with a guy like Benny who's a professional liar, a professional propagandist who has decades and decades of experience. And Nathan Law, he just graduated from high school. What is a young man? How does a young man like compete or compare up to a professional liar with decades and decades of experience? This guy's Nathan Law is just a young man here, doesn't have a whole lot of life experience yet, got his whole life in front of him, but now he's just saddled with a criminal record in Hong Kong. He's basically stateless now because his Chinese citizenship and Hong Kong permanent resident status just got revoked, because he just got recruited and groomed by these imperialistic collaborators. Lord Alton, the feudal lord here, basically compares Nathan to a British politician from a few hundred years ago who lobbied against slavery against blacks, which that's a good thing. But right now, these people are just comparing Nathan Law to this anti-slavery guy to make Nathan Law feel important and what he's doing is a noble cause. This is just not comparable, what Nathan's trying to do and what Benny and Lord Alton here are doing. They're just trying to interfere with another country that's working the way it should. China is the only country that's working the way it should, and these Benny and Lord Alton here, they're just being salespeople, grooming Nathan, and Nathan just doesn't stand a chance here against these professional liars who are in their late 50s and early 70s. Page 200 talks about Article 45 of Hong Kong Basic Law. So basically, nothing here is wrong. And Benny also admits that there's no timeline to that. to having a universal suffrage in Hong Kong, which is this statement's accurate, but his interpretation is wrong. He forgets the part where it says the chief executive of Hong Kong will be elected by universal suffrage but he forgets the part where it says at a time that is suitable depending on the situation in Hong Kong at that time. So right now, it just doesn't look like universal suffrage is going to work when back in 2014 and also in 2019 when there was that extradition law fiasco with all these protesters. Basically, nothing was getting done with what these pro-democratic parties were doing in a legislative council. Universal suffrage it's not going to work right now. And even in 2014, the pro-democrats were offered universal suffrage, but it has to be screened by the central government in Beijing, and this is just not this is a reasonable requirement by central government, because what type of country would have a state, province, or president or prime minister who isn't loyal to the country that you serve? Even when the president of the United States, like Donald Trump or Biden or whatever, or Justin Trudeau, takes office as the top government official in the respective countries, you have to take an oath towards your country, and you just got to be loyal to your country, not commit treason. If, for example, if Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden hated Canada or America, you're basically a self-hater against your own country. You're not suitable to lead your country if you're a self-hater and doing everything possible to just screw up your own country and screw up your own citizens. That's just not appropriate. Every country has their own national security law, and every country has a requirement with a prime minister or president or premier. You can't be a self-hater and who sells out your country to other countries, like what that Zelensky guy is doing in Ukraine. That guy's not for his own country. That's what happens when you have a leader who doesn't swear his allegiance and doesn't have the heart and mind power to serve your country, because you're serving someone else. So in 2014, Beijing offered universal suffrage. The Democrats didn't like it because they don't want Beijing pre-approving candidates based on their loyalty towards China, which is their own country. So basically, the timing just wasn't right, and the status quo of the chief executive getting appointed by a trade unionist and big business and various representatives from various industries in Hong Kong vote privately for the chief executive. What the pan-democrats should have did, if they really care about democracy, was just take what is offered by Beijing, because what Beijing offered, it's not contrary to the Sino-British Joint Declaration, and it's also not contrary to the Hong Kong Basic Law. They should have just taken what was available at that time and take it from there, work from there, just set your foot in the door first. On page 203, Alex Zhao, who's an activist in Hong Kong, he was also elected to legislative council, but he had a problem with properly reading his declaration to take office. He just couldn't pledge his allegiance to Hong Kong and China. He just made an embarrassment of himself by swearing and can't say the word China properly and saying some bad words in English and Chinese. So basically, this Benny Rogers claims that Alex Zhao, he has a problem with how things work in Hong Kong, like housing development, capitalism, and just how the way Hong Kong works. He has a problem with it. Basically, he did a lot of activism and thinking on political issues, including housing and land reform, infrastructure, media freedom, academic freedom, and human rights. But you know what? All this land stuff and media stuff and the housing situation, it was created by the United Kingdom. The Hong Kong system currently is imported by the English colonialist, got nothing to do with China. And Alex here has a problem with this political and economic system that the UK brought over Hong Kong, but he just blames it all on China. If Hong Kong already got a housing and land system that was implemented and brought over by the colonizers, how could you blame China for all that when it was created? All this trouble was created by the colonizers. And when he talks about reform and all that, I just don't see what kind of reform and what could be done within the current system, within the capitalistic system. The only change that he could do, or anyone could do, is to just become a socialist paradise like what mainland China is. And yeah, things are working good in China. So I don't understand how Alex has a problem with the Western capitalist system, but at the same time has a problem with China when both China and the West are complete opposite. This guy's just a hypocrite. Benny's a hypocrite. These people just don't know what they're talking about. On page 209 here, 204 over here, Benny basically says that Alex Zhao didn't accomplish anything and the talks led to nowhere. Well, what do you expect? Alex Zhao was trying to negotiate with the chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, and other high-ranking folks in the Hong Kong government. What do you expect? Alex Zhao is a young man, early 20s or late teens at the time. And how could you compete with government people who have decades and decades of philosophical and political training in their brain? They have experience. It's just like Nathan Law, how he can't compete or compare with professional paid liars who spread fake news propaganda against China, which is Benny Rogers and Lord Elton. There's young people like Nathan Law is just taking orders from Lord Elton and Benny Rogers and their colonial masters. Well, Alex Zhao is just the same thing. He's taking orders from foreign interferers like the United States and UK, like Nathan Law. These people, young people, early 20s, you can't run a country, you can't protect the country, and you can't make decisions with country. Not enough life experience and not enough on-the-job training. It's just like Zelensky in Ukraine. He answers to his NAFO, North Atlantic Fascist Organization, masters, overlords. And Zelensky is an actor. He's a comedian / cross-dressing dancer on TV. How could this guy compete with Putin, who has a whole lifetime of experience? It's just the same thing. These people, Zelensky, Alex Zhao, and Nathan Law, they're being controlled and told what to do by their bosses, their colonial foreign interferers, overlords. On page 208 over here, it basically talks about Xi Jinping's white paper and requirements for civil servants in Hong Kong. I don't see this white paper is just a clarification. It's basically like an article repeating the past, but none of the ideas in Xi Jinping's white paper about Hong Kong is new. He's just expressing his view, and his view is basically accurate. None of it's personal opinion. It's just repeating previous obligations and legal documents. So basically, if you're a civil servant in Hong Kong, you basically have to serve your country and city. What I don't see what's the problem with this. You can't have a civil servant in any country who's working against your own country. That's basically just treason. Every country has a treason and national security law. So Benny Rogers just being deranged here, blaming China as being bad, but every country is like this. This is not bad. You need a functional country where people actually believe in your own country, and you can't be self-haters regardless of what country you're from. And also, so over here, nothing's wrong with the statement here where it says, Hong Kong is under the is below Hong Kong. It's not an equal partner to the rest of China, but it's below. So in the Hong Kong Basic Law, which was agreed by both China and the UK, and both parties signed the joint declaration, Sino-British joint declaration. So basically, this basic law clearly states that the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government operates and falls directly below the central government of the People's Republic of China. This is not Hong Kong and mainland China is not a federation. They're not equal partners. The central government is above the regional government. So Benny Rogers is claiming that Xi Jinping here on his white paper and on this his claim here, Benny Rogers claimed that China, Xi Jinping is all of a sudden changing the relationship between the rest of China and Hong Kong. This is fake news. Nothing has changed. The regional government of Hong Kong is below the central government. It's not a federation. This is a devolved power. It's like how the UK Parliament in London, Westminster, devolved their powers to the Parliament in Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's not a federation where you add up a bunch of different provinces and states together and create a federal government like Canada, USA. The states of the United States and the provinces of Canada, for example, they are co-sovereigns with the federal government. They have shared power. They have separation of powers. But so this is same. But Hong Kong and the rest of China is not a federation. It's a devolved power. It's a top-down approach, like what the UK does with Scotland and Northern Ireland. Nowhere does it state it's a federation with co-sovereignty. On page 209 to 212, Benny Rogers talks about these bookstore owners. There's a few partners in a fake news bookstore in Causeway Bay district of Hong Kong. So there's nothing wrong. Benny Rogers here just bends the whole idea. Basically, they're publishing fake news about people in China all the time, high-ranking government folks or even private individuals. But you know what? There's a court of law. These people don't like being defamed, and spreading fake news about them, ruining their personal reputation. It's just like any other country, Canada, USA, UK. If you defame people and try and ruin their character and reputation, they can sue you. They can go to court and seek an injunction and a cease and desist order. This is what these people in China basically did. They got tired of their reputation being ruined, and they got a court order, and the police in mainland China we're just enforcing this court order to stop this defamation or whatever how you say that word. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. So basically, Benny fails to mention all the fake news that these bookstore owners were publishing at their bookstore. But in 2012, he talks about the fake news about Xi Jinping. So basically, these bookstore owners were publishing fake news that Xi Jinping had an affair while he was married. And there were some documents to prove it, and it would be an embarrassment if it was published. But you know what? I just don't understand this. If you're married and having an affair with another woman, what type of documents would there be to prove that there's an affair? There's no marriage certificate. There's no legal contract. But just seriously, if you're having a secret affair behind your wife's back, what type of documents would you have, and what type of documents would you even produce to show this? And if you're trying to hide it, keep it secret, why would you produce any documents? Like, what type of seriously, what type of documents would there be to provide as proof that you're having an affair? This is just more fake news. And also for these bookstore owners, if they have a problem with mainland China, communism is bad, China is bad, this and that, what are they doing in China? Why are they crossing the land boundary between Hong Kong and mainland China if China is so bad? Why are they putting themselves in danger on purpose? There is no danger. They know it. They're just spreading fake news to make money and defaming people, ruining people's reputation. And when they approached the land boundary between Hong Kong and mainland China, the mainland police were just enforcing a court order like any country would do. On page 216 here, Simon Zhang. He basically worked for the British consulate as a trade representative for Scotland, promoting Scottish items like Scottish whiskey and smoked salmon and whatever Scotland produces. So this guy, if he has a problem with China, why is he going to China in the first place, and why is he visiting prostitutes in China? I'll show you this video later when I'm done talking of him going to like a shady place, and during the interview with BBC, I think it was, you'll see it later anyways, the Western journalist asked, did he visit a prostitute in Hong Kong? I mean, in China, in Shenzhen, which is against the law. And this guy, Simon Zhang, he couldn't even answer this question, can't even give a straight answer. All he did was said he did nothing regrettable. Well, that's an open, is it regrettable to visit a prostitute in Shenzhen? I don't know, it depends on how you define it. But this guy broke the law, and he got punished for it with some administrative jail time. And Benny over here also talks about how people are searched when they're crossing the boundary between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. I also want to point out that there's no such thing as a land border between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, because border is only an international border between two countries. A border between Canada and USA. Canada is one country, USA is a second country. So there's an international border. What you have between Hong Kong and Shenzhen is not an international border, so there is no border. It is just a land boundary with checkpoints. So when Hong Kong permanent residents who are Chinese citizens cross it, it's considered domestic travel. It's travel within China. It's not. So if you travel with a return home permit or a Tongxinjiang or Tonghangjing, for the locals, it's not the same thing as if you're somebody who travels between Hong Kong and Shenzhen with a passport. For example, if Simon Zhang travels from Hong Kong to Shenzhen, it's a different lineup and it's a different system compared to somebody who's using a passport to travel between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. If you're using a passport to travel between Hong Kong and Shenzhen with a Canadian passport, like what I do, unfortunately, your lineup and the whole process is different from the other Hong Kong people who are Chinese citizens. You're basically crossing, you're getting treated, it's treated as crossing a border if you're using a passport, like what I do. But if you're using a Tongxinjiang or Tonghangjing, it's crossing an internal boundary, and the lineup is different, and the floor of the building, like the level of the floor, it's different. You go the first floor at Law Wu border, the main crossing, it's for Hong Kong folks. So basically you just show them your card and they scan it. But right now, this was 10 years ago, but right now, it's all automated. You shove your card into the machine, the first gate opens, you step inside, and then you can and then for this, to open the second gate, you have to use your fingerprint, and it's just an automated process. Nobody talks to you. You don't have to talk to or see anybody. But if you're like old or don't know what's going on, you could still talk to a person, show your ID, and they'll just do a quick scan and you'll be on your way. But for the passport holders slash foreigners, and including mainland residents, folks like me, if you're using a passport, you have to go to the second floor of the building and they scan your passport, and you just get treated like you're entering at an airport, like crossing an international border. So when Simon Chung claims that he's scared or got a problem with crossing the boundary between mainland China and Hong Kong, this is just absolutely fake news. Hong Kong permanent residents who are Chinese citizens, you get different treatment from people who are crossing with a passport. The floor is different, and for this high-speed rail place, it's the same building, but it's a different section. You're separate. Hong Kong folks who are Chinese citizens and passport folks and also mainland folks, you're separated into 3 different categories, and you get different treatment.
Have you ever visited a prostitute? Have you ever solicited prostitution? Did you in Shenzhen? Have you at any point in your life?
I don't want to focus on the question whether I solicit prostitutions, because that's exactly what they want. So I just wanted to stay clear here, is that I did nothing regrettable to those people I cherish and love. I did not.
On page 219 here, Benny's just trying to defame and give Hong Kong police a bad reputation. This is fake news. What Hong Kong police did was very restrained in reality. Just judge by yourself from Western media. They don't go around beating people and shooting people and killing people, and don't act as aggressive as American police. Hong Kong police was just trying to enforce law and order, keep law and order. It's not excessive force. What these people clad in black and mask of their face in black, it's just not acceptable. These people were trying to keep law and order, take away the bad people, and move these bad people into an area where they can contain them in various neighborhoods. What Hong Kong police did was not unreasonable. They're keeping law and order from and preventing anarchy. On page 219, we go back to Joey Sue over here. She basically spreading fake news about Hong Kong police. She basically says that they're blindly following orders from officials and from the government, but in reality they just try to keep law and order, just like what any police force would do. And she also claims that mainland Chinese immigrants to Hong Kong have risen recently in recent years, and there are more mainland Chinese people in Hong Kong's police force. This is just not possible, because to be a civil servant or a police officer, you have to pass a whole bunch of written tests that includes English command, that to prove that you have good command of English and Chinese, both oral and written. So if you got a bunch of mainland Chinese immigrants, there's not enough time for these immigrants to learn English. So this is just fake news created by Benny Rogers and Joey Sue. and policemen speaking in pure Mandarin in the front lines. This is just fake news too. Yeah, both people in Hong Kong speak both Cantonese and Standard Chinese, which is Mandarin. They could have been just giving instructions to innocent mainland visitors or tourists to find a safe place. Nobody has seen any video of proof of this, and this is just not reasonable. Everybody in Hong Kong police are locals, and yeah, there were some white people from the UK, but most of them all retired now. So everybody in Hong Kong police is local now. This is just more deranged fake news from Benny Rogers and Joey Sue. On page 220 over here there's a guy called Ted Hui. No, it's not Hui. This in standard Chinese in mainland China, there's another last name called Hui if you say in standard Chinese, but this is in Hong Kong it's Hui. It's a totally different last name. So Ted Hui over here, Ted Hui over here is a pan-democratic legislative council member before they were kicked out for filibustering and just paralyzing the government. So this guy says he was attacked by the police in Causeway Bay because he was targeted for being pro-democratic. But this is just fake news. This is just deranged. So what do you expect if you go in front of a protesting crowd and try and aggravate the crowd? Nobody saw his face. The police not gonna be like, oh, this is Ted Hui. Ted Hui, let's go get him. No, this guy was taking part in a mass protest. They were behaving badly. So what do you expect if you got tear gassed? Page 224 over here talks about the Yun Long attack. Basically, Benny here blames it on triad gangs and organized crime, hired thugs hired by the government. But this is fake news too. These people, Benny Rogers does not understand Chinese culture and how Chinese civilization works, especially when it comes to small towns and rural villages. So basically, it's like a parallel society along the state, with the secular government. So when you have a bunch of small towns and villages in China, including Yunlong over here, there are these like small towns with and villages with 2 or 3 floor houses. And for these communities, the only way you're gonna live in these communities is based on your ancestry. For example, if your mom and dad were from there, you could live there if you want, or by marriage. So people, for example, like what I do here, I live in a small town here in China. I live here because this is my wife's ancestral hometown, and I can live here through marriage, and my children can live here through their ancestry to my wife, which is the mom. But in Yunlong, it's the same thing. Got a bunch of 2 or 3 story houses, small villages, and around the town. So these people have a collective society, and these people were just frustrating that their economic livelihoods were being disrupted, with their shops being disrupted, their business being disrupted, and daily life was being disrupted. They couldn't bring their children to school, and they couldn't do their daily life shopping in their around their villages and their main town, which is Yunlong downtown. So Benny Rogers doesn't understand Chinese culture here. When it comes to these villages, you cannot sell the land to other people, and you cannot sell your house to other people. The land title system works different. You only have village title, but you don't get like a land title or a certificate from the government saying you own this condo or whatever. Benny Rogers doesn't understand these tight knit villages and small towns. these places are only for people with ancestry to this place, the village, or through marriage. So these tight-knit people just got frustrated that they were being disrupted. These people are not criminal tribes. These are just frustrated villagers and small town folks who want a normal life, and they gotta continue they gotta make a living. They can't be disrupted by these thugs, anarchists, funded by the United States and UK, causing anarchy, trying to overthrow the government. On page 225 over here, Benny's just recruiting and grooming another young man from Hong Kong with the name Jim. Nobody who knows who Jim is. And this whole thing is just a setup. I don't understand how you could just go to a small place here, called Wimbledon Common or whatever, and just randomly small place and bump into a Britain's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, who's responsible for human rights. I don't see it, and Benny over here admits that it's not common. You see cabinet ministers, UK politicians here. It was just by complete random chance. This thing is either a fake made up story, or it's a setup with this guy, with this Lord Ahmed. So if this occasion did happen, it's not fake news, make believe event. This Jim guy's just being recruited and groomed by Benny Rogers and Lord Alton, and being along with Lord Ahmed. These people are just setting Jim up, trying to make him feel important and special, that he can change the world, he can change Hong Kong, change China, trying to make Jim here feel that he's larger than life. It's just like what's that name of that police thing? I forgot what's it called, but it's like you recruit somebody, where a police officer pretends to be some like organized crime underworld boss, high level figure, and you try and recruit somebody and make them confess to a crime. Basically, I just forgot what the name of this thing. So it's just like recruiting someone to a gang. You set them up, bring them out for lunch or dinner, and you just bump into somebody who's like high level in the UK government, and Benny and Lord Alton make themselves look like they're well connected, and Jim can be well connected, and Jim feel like he knows a lot of important people in the UK and can do a lot of change in Hong Kong and China. But in reality, Lord Ahmed, Alton, and Benny here, they're just professional recruiters who are professional liars. It's just recruiting people into a criminal gang, street gang type of thing. On page 226 here, there's this guy, Jim again, talks about Jim again. Basically, it says Jim here took a fire extinguisher at a subway station and started releasing all the chemicals from it. And he said it's not a problem. It was warning people of a pro-Beijing mob to get away. So this is just deranged. What kind of normal person or good Samaritan would take a fire extinguisher and cause anarchy? What do you expect? And this normal innocent people were getting frustrated from all this anarchy, and some people took matters in their own hand and grabbed Jim here, who was spraying everybody and spraying everything with this fire extinguisher. And a woman claimed that her finger was injured. But what do you expect? If you touch other people, injure other people's finger, you're gonna get charged by the victim and the police. They're gonna file a police complaint, and you're gonna face justice if you touch somebody, assault somebody. And over here at the bottom says Jim bought a airplane ticket of Hong Kong, and he he dressed as an exchange student or whatever. How do you dress like a student? What's the difference between a student and anybody else? Do students wear like special clothing or different type of clothes that makes them different from other young people or people who are around the same age as them? This is just more fake news. And it also says in blue here, at the time there were not too many checks at the airport, so I was able to leave. This is fake news. When you get your boarding pass and do check-in luggage, the flight, the airport, the what you call it, the Cathay Pacific or airline company will scan your passport, and after that you have to go through security, and after security you have to go through immigration control where the automated machine will scan your Hong Kong identity card and your fingerprint. Or if you don't want, if you have a problem, you can still walk up to a immigration police officer and they'll scan your Hong Kong identity card. So either way, if you use the e-channel, self-service e-channel to scan your Hong Kong identity card and fingerprint to leave Hong Kong, or talk to a real immigration officer, there's always going to be this scan of your identity, and if there's a warrant out for your arrest, or if you're a wanted person by the government or police, they would get you right away. For example, I take my Hong Kong identity card and I scan, oh, Edward here is wanted by the police. They'll come for me right away at the border at the airport. This is just more make-believe fake news that there's no checks and this guy could just take off from Hong Kong. Just fake news. On page 227 over here, Benny says that the protesters who stormed the Hong Kong Legislative Council building were well disciplined, but this is just fake news. If you look at CNN or other mainstream media video footage, none of what they did was discipline. It was just total anarchy, worse than the Capitol Hill insurrection that was caused by Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo. Benny Rogers here is just doing fake news, trying to justify illegal actions and total anarchy. There was no discipline for these rioters who entered the Hong Kong Legislative building. It was just a total anarchy, they were totally mad. They just wanted to trash the whole place. This is just more fake news and bias from Benny Rogers trying to justify his colonial imperialist mindset and his cheering of these young people who are not old enough to understand the full situation of Hong Kong, the whole political situation, and these people are not well informed enough, and they're going to be unfortunately saddled with a criminal record that will haunt them for the rest of their life. This type of Benny Rogers isn't the one who's suffering from having a criminal record in his hometown and home country. Benny Rogers and these people cheering these young people on who just stormed the building, how do these people sleep? These young people are not now saddled and their life will be affected. In chapter 10, page 290, Benny Rogers says heroin is a common drug and commonly available in all big cities in China. This is fake news. You can't find heroin in China. China does not have a drug abuse problem, and you can't find hard drugs. If you're a heroin or hard drugs dealer and get caught, there's cameras here all over the place, facial recognition. If you traffic drugs, you will be killed. You will get your day in court, and the judge will find you guilty, and you'll be executed. Heroin is just not available. Hard drugs are just not available in China. You can't even get them here. If you're a drug user, you'll get serious time in jail. If you take drugs, steal from people, and commit other crimes where there are victims, you'll get executed by the government. If you're a drug dealer or trafficker, you will also get executed. on page 295 here talks about how women from Myanmar and other places get trafficked. And so this is just more fake news. This is just more fake news to dehumanize China and dehumanize Chinese people. You cannot buy a woman. There's no slavery in China. You cannot buy a wife or a girlfriend or whatever. This is just absolutely fake news. And you know what? If most people here do not live in Shanghai, Beijing, 60% or more of the people live in China, live in 2 or 3 story houses. And it's just a bunch of small towns and villages that surround small towns. It's a collective society. Everybody knows everybody. If you get like a Myanmar girl or wife in your home and town, everybody would know. It just won't be it'll just be an embarrassment and for your whole family and yourself. And you know what? Other people will report you to the police that you have illegal immigrants in your house or illegal immigrants, this and that, and they'll come. There are signs here outside passport offices with a phone number where people could phone and report illegal immigrants. But I don't think they ever get any phone calls because there are no illegal immigrants other than people who are teaching English here illegally. This is just more fake news. And if you live in a condo and see, I think your neighbors and just random people on the street and people who sell you vegetables at small shops or restaurants, they'll know that what you're doing here is illegal. If you have like a illegal immigrant wife here, this whole thing's just not making any sense from Benny Rogers, just more fake news. Chapter 11 talks about North Korea and China. This is just more fake news and delusion as well. It says people in North Korea are trafficked from North Korea to the rest of to China and other mostly the border area, but also other parts of China for slave labor and cheap labor work in factories. This whole thing is just contradictory because later on he talks about how people, North Koreans, go to China, somehow get to China, and they just get deported back to North Korea where they are punished. So if you have people from North Korea going to China as slaves, why would they be deported back to North Korea when they're found? And he says the government and people in high places are taking part of this, but this whole thing is just contradictory, and this whole logic is breaking down. And if somebody does illegally cross from North Korea to China, they're considered illegal immigrants, and China's not going to keep illegal immigrants. They're going to be returned to where they come from. That's how a country should work, not like taking in refugees and just creating anarchy. If you walk around Paris, France, there's just a bunch of illegal immigrants sleeping everywhere in parks. It just ruined it for all the locals. Benny Rogers here is just more fake news. He's just a professional paid liar and propagandist. And also Lord Alton claims that North Korea is bad, people are in poverty, it's a total disaster for the last 70 years. But this fake news from these Western folks, imperialists and colonialist fake news media, if what they're telling people is correct about North Korea, everybody in North Korea will be dead already because all the babies died and all the old people died. The population should be 0 by now. This is just more fake news.